back to the OJ Room channel. Following the last making corset video, I made Emma's dream blouse. It is a blouse that is good to wear as an inner top of corset, can be worn casually with jeans or as a cute puff sleeve style with sleeves up. More information about the PDF patterns and instruction can be found in the description below. And there is a video on how to print the pattern and how to assemble it. Please refer to the link above. These are the fabric and materials that we will use today. I used a light satin fabric. Weight is 90 grams. I recommend silky, soft, lightweight fabrics. And you will also need one piece of elastic thread and a 6mm elastic band. First, prepare the cut bodice fabric. Draw the shirring line indicated in the pattern on the outer fabric. You can add or subtract as many lines as you like. And wind the elastic thread around the bobbin. Wrap lightly without pulling hard. After inserting the bobbin as usual, manually move the needle to raise the lower thread. And pull out the long thread so that the elastic thread does not fall out. Adjust the upper thread tension to 6 or 7 and the stitch length to 4. So test the remaining fabric first. Then check that the elastic thread is properly sewn and that is well trimmed. Now make shirring along the line you drew. When sewing with elastic thread, never backstitch the beginning and end. Just pull out the thread long. If the elastic thread runs out in the middle, rewind it and use it again. However, if it falls off during sewing, remove the elastic thread and sew again. Overlock the side seam and upper seam allowance. Then draw 8.6 cm on the inside of the fabric, which is twice the length of the top seam, and fold. Fold and iron the fabric along the line you draw. Then stitch it two lines to create a tunnel, 4 cm lines and 3 cm lines as drawn on the pattern. Attach the elastic band to the clothespin and insert it into the tunnel. Sew the elastic band to the seam before the bands come up. On the other side, sew the band to the seam allowance as well. Distribute the elastic band evenly by pulling them to the sides so that they do not clump together on one side. And the back plate is made in the same way. Put the front and back plates right sides together and sew the side seam. Press the side seam open. Now overlock the hem. Next, fold the overlocked seam allowance twice and iron it. Sew the hem with the seam allowance folded. Prepare the cut sleeve fabric. Fold the sleeve, draw 8.6 cm on the inside of the fabric, which is twice the length of the top seam, and fold. Fold and iron the fabric along the line you draw. Overlock the side seam of the sleeve and the seam allowance of the upper hem. Then stitch it to line to create a tunnel. 4 cm line and 3 cm line as drawn on the pattern. Attach the elastic band to the clothespin and insert it into the tunnel. Sew the elastic band to the seam before the band come up. On the other side, sew the band to the seam allowance as well. Distribute the elastic band evenly by pulling them to the sides so that they do not clump together on one side. Sew the side seam of the sleeve. At this time, the overlooked side line may have stretched, so be sure to adjust the length of the side line with a pin before sewing. Press the side seam open. Now we will sew the hem of the sleeve. Turn the fabric inside out to see the inside. Draw twice the seam allowance on the inner hem of the sleeve. Fold the seam allowance along the line you draw and iron it. Before sewing, first overlock the bottom seam allowance. After overlocking, leave a hole of 3 or 4 cm and sew 1 cm of the hem of the sleeve. Insert the elastic band into a hole. Secure with a pin so that the band does not fall out. And sew the band together. Pull the band sideways so it goes through the hole. Now we will sew on sewn opening. The sleeves are complete. Next, we will connect the bodice and sleeves. Put the bodice and sleeves right sides together and sew them. Before sewing, push the elastic band backwards so that the seam allowance is flat. After sewing, overlock the seam allowance. Sew the opposite sleeve in the same way. Finally, steam the shirring wrinkles to further reduce the waistline. The Emma string blouse is complete. Thanks for watching my video and I hope you love this project. See you next time!